Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over three storms out in the Atlantic. We have Invest 97L and Invest 98L, both in the eastern Atlantic, and then we have another storm down in the Caribbean, which could be moving into the Gulf of Mexico quite quickly. We're going to have a lot more in today's video as well, so make sure you are staying tuned all the way until the end so you get all the information in the video. Taking a look at the current National Weather Service page, you can see that we have some air quality alerts in effect for the Northwest, as well as a few frost advisories in northwestern Montana. We have some red flag warnings in effect for parts of California, Colorado, and Wyoming for fire danger. And then we have some excessive heat watches in effect for parts of Arizona and Southern California. We have some heat advisories also for the central and eastern U.S. So basically from parts of Nebraska, Kansas, and Oklahoma eastward all the way until Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan, with a little area of excessive heat warnings in effect for a little bit of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Arkansas as well. Yesterday we had a high temperature of 111 degrees in Death Valley, California, and Stovepipe Wells, California. The low temperature was 12 miles northeast of Sand Creek Station, Oregon, where they got down to 23 degrees Fahrenheit. The highest rainfall report was in Ringwood, New Jersey, where they got 7.6 inches of rainfall yesterday, and there were no snowfall reports over the past couple of days. Here's a look at our weather photo of the day. This was sent in from Redog Cody, so thank you to him for sending that in. This is from Vernon, Connecticut, where from Tropical Storm Henry, they had a lot of tree damage and also some flooding. You can see how saturated the ground is, as you can see mainly over here. You can see that you have the water kind of sticking up almost to the height of those little of the grass in that area, and it's very saturated. We had rain over some of these areas from the night before the storm hit. Then you got an additional 4, 5, 6, 7 inches of rainfall, whatever amount that would be, and then as that storm went inland, it continued to slow down, and even though you weren't dealing with the intensity of the rain, it was still raining, so you really didn't get a chance over that few day time frame to really get a break from any of that rainfall, and that causes the tree damage, which you see on the right hand side of your screen, where you have the saturated ground. Doesn't take as much wind to blow over the trees. Inland over parts of Connecticut, this is taken in north central Connecticut, and this was far inland, so it wasn't like this is along a coastal area where you're dealing with the high winds. Winds were gusting up near 30 or 40 miles per hour, but in a normal situation, that would not cause that tree to fall down. It's probably because of how saturated the ground is. The tree was able to move around a little bit, and that caused it to topple over. So thank you to Redog Cody for sending that in. If you want to send in your photos, send them to the email address on the bottom of your screen, or it's also in the description of the video. And then when you send them in, just tell me where generally that photo was taken from, so I could send it, or so I can put it inside the video. So starting off with the National Hurricane Center page, you can see that we have three disturbances. We have Invest 97L on the top part of your screen, 20% chance within the next 48 hours, 60% chance within the next 5 days. Invest 98L has a 20% chance within the next 2 days of developing, and then a 30% chance within the next 5 days of developing. Disturbance 2, which is down in the Caribbean, that has a 0% chance of developing within the next 2 days, but as it starts to get organized over the next 5 days, it does have a 60% chance of developing. And then you can see ex-tropical storm Henry, which is just off Cape Cod. That'll be moving swiftly further to the northeast. It's mainly just producing a little bit of extra rain, which again, that could be still an issue in these areas. Like we saw in the weather photo of the day, we had a ton of flooding within these areas. So even if you're getting maybe just a ½ inch to an inch of extra rainfall, that could still cause some issues, especially with how saturated the ground is over these areas. Let's take a look at these storms individually. Invest 97L is the one that's over the central Atlantic. This is the one that's up near Bermuda, or just to the east of Bermuda, located at 22 degrees north by 46.8 degrees west, maximum winds of 40 miles per hour. So it is at tropical storm force winds, but as you can see on that satellite imagery, definitely not organized enough for them to classify that as a tropical storm. So they want to see this kind of wrap up a little bit, maybe get a little bit more organized. It already has the wind speeds to be classified as a tropical storm. All we would need is for this to kind of wrap up a little bit, And for it to kind of form into a more of an organized system, it doesn't take a lot more for this to really be classified a tropical storm, considering that it already has those high enough winds. Looking at the minimum pressure, it's at 1,009 millibars right now. So again, it's not very strong. It's not a very strong storm in terms of its pressure. It's not very organized, but it does have the wind speeds going for it. The discussion reads: a broad trough of low pressure is producing disorganized showers and thunderstorms over the central tropical Atlantic, about 900 miles east-northeast of the northern Leeward Islands. Little development of the system is expected during the next day or two, while it moves northwestward at about 15 miles per hour over marginally conducive ocean temperatures and is affected by strong upper-level winds. Afterwards, the environmental conditions are expected to become more favorable for gradual development, and a tropical depression could form by the end of the week while the system turns eastward over the central Atlantic. So we're expecting it to do a loop, kind of like what Henry was supposed to do. Expected to do a loop, and then as it moves further to the north, it is expected to turn pretty much straight east. As it does so, it could potentially develop, again, like they were saying, into a tropical depression. Who knows, maybe even a tropical storm if it can hold on to some of those winds. Looking at the second disturbance, this is the one down in the Caribbean. It's currently located between about 10 degrees north and 15 degrees north, and also 61 degrees west to 73 degrees west. So they're basically saying within their discussion, I had to go deeper into their discussion to actually figure out where it was located, but you can see that they have basically a box from here to here where the storm is developing right now, and it's expected to move northwestward into areas around the Yucatan Peninsula. And then eventually, who knows, it could go into the Caribbean. It could move back into the Gulf of Mexico. We have a couple of different options with this storm. This part of the Caribbean is very conducive for development. So unless there's a lot of wind shear, it's not going to be too hard for this storm to develop. We don't know the winds, the minimum pressure, or how fast it's moving as of just now. But according to their discussion, a broad area of low pressure is expected to form over the southwestern Caribbean Sea in a few days from a tropical wave currently located over the eastern Caribbean Sea. Environmental conditions are forecast to be conducive for development of the low, and a tropical depression could form late this week or this weekend while the system moves northwestward over the northwestern Caribbean Sea across the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico and into the southwestern Gulf of Mexico by Sunday. So that's what the National Hurricane Center is saying. And then finally, for our last system that we're going to be talking about in today's video, this one's Invest 98L. This is the one in the eastern Caribbean, in the eastern Atlantic, located just west of Africa, located 9 degrees north by 26.7 degrees west, maximum winds of 28 miles per hour, minimum pressure of 1,008 millibars. According to the National Hurricane Center, another tropical wave over the far eastern tropical Atlantic, located about 400 miles south-southwest of the Cabo Verde Islands, is producing a concentrated area of showers and thunderstorms. Some development of the system is possible over the next several days while it moves westward to west-northwestward at 10 to 15 miles per hour over the eastern tropical Atlantic. Upper level winds are forecast to become less conducive for development by the weekend. We do have a little bit of shear to the west of the storm, so as it moves to the west, it could potentially weaken. That's why they only gave it, I believe, a 20 or a 30% chance of developing within the next 5 days. Taking a look at the sea surface temperatures, this is going to be a big part, especially into why the second disturbance down in the Caribbean is going to develop, or could potentially develop. If we look at these sea surface temperatures, these are very, very warm. And when we saw this with Henry, it was moving over very warm waters. We're looking at that 26 degree or 80 degree Fahrenheit threshold being all the way up here, when normally we would see it maybe kind of go right here and then squiggle back towards here as it kind of moves just south of the Gulf Stream. So you would see maybe that little pocket of 80 degree Fahrenheit waters along the Gulf Stream, and then to the south of there, it would cool back down into the 70s and become less conducive for development. What we're seeing is that Gulf Stream is just carrying along in pretty much a straight north-northeast line, and pretty much anywhere along that track is going to be above 80 degrees Fahrenheit. and that's normally the threshold you want to see, unless it's moving pretty much into the northern Atlantic or anywhere up here. It's not gonna. None of these storms are really gonna face any challenges with developing solely based on the sea surface temperatures. There's gonna have to be a couple other factors to break this up. If we look at the Gulf of Mexico and also the Caribbean, you can see how warm these waters are. We're looking at the temperatures in Celsius, so you can see that we have about 29 to, I would say, 30 degrees Celsius waters. That's closer to 88 to almost 91 or 92 degrees Fahrenheit. So those are really warm waters. You can see that little area of 31 degree Celsius waters near southern Louisiana. So really, really warm within these areas, and that's going to help these storms grow. Also, something that you want to see is the OHC be higher, and that's what we see. We see that over pretty much the entirety of the Caribbean, especially as you get into the Western Caribbean, and then also back into the Eastern Gulf of Mexico, especially, we have a large area of high OHC or ocean heat content. And this is basically showing you how much energy is below the surface layer of the ocean, and those storms can definitely upwell that water. That's why you usually see after a storm moves through, some of the colder patches of water start to come to the surface. That's because the storm is upwelling the water. We have cooler waters at the bottom of the ocean, and those cooler waters are going to be risen up to the top, and that's how you get some cooler ocean temperatures after storms move through. That's why that happens. And as they're upwelling those cooler waters further down in the ocean, they're also upwelling some of that OHC, and that can help these storms develop quite nicely. You can see that, especially for that one down in the Caribbean, it's gonna have a nice environment around it to develop, especially with the ocean. There will be some implications with wind shear that may become an issue. If we look at the wind shear map, you can see that there are some moderate to high levels of wind shear in through the Caribbean, especially from the Eastern Caribbean on to the north. What we see is that once you go into the Gulf of Mexico, that wind shear does die down a little bit, so it's not as pronounced as you get into the Eastern or into the Western Caribbean, and also especially into the Central and Western Gulf of Mexico. So not as much wind shear there. You can see that for that system in the Eastern Atlantic over Western Africa. You can see that that one is going to be moving into an area of light or even moderate wind shear. That's indicated by those green and yellow colors. And then you can see that we have that other storm, which is currently right here, as it's moving northwest and then eventually curving up to the northeast, it will be picked up by the jet stream, and then that will cause some wind shear. So the jet stream to the north right now, we have again a trough into the west, and that jet stream is carrying along to the north of the storm. Once that storm moves into the jet stream, it will probably weaken due to the very strong upper level winds. If we look at the amount of Saharan dust and dry air in the atmosphere, you can see that there is quite a lot of it right now. We have high amounts, especially for that storm over the Eastern Atlantic and just west of Africa, a ton of Saharan dust within that area. And then also for the Caribbean, the southwestern Atlantic, you can see that we have high amounts of Saharan dust within the atmosphere, high amounts of drier air within the atmosphere, and this could help to weaken the storm. Now, I don't think it's going to be as big of a player in the Caribbean as it will be in that storm over the Eastern Atlantic. The wind shear, the lighter moderate wind shear combined with a high amount of Saharan dust will cause some issues. If you guys remember, especially over the southeast last year, there was a big Saharan dust event where the skies became very, very kind of brownish even during the day. And I made a video, I'm pretty sure, about that last year. And something like that, similar to that, is happening, but over the Eastern Atlantic. So it was rare last year because it happened over the U.S. Usually you don't see Saharan dust move that far to the west, but the same exact thing is going to be happening over the Eastern Atlantic, and you can see why that would be so challenging for these storms to move through. It's going to be very hard to develop a storm when you're in that very hazy and dry and really dust-filled atmosphere. So that's going to be an issue for these storms, especially the one in the Eastern Atlantic. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and leaving a like on the video, and also turn on notifications so you never miss one of my uploads. That is going to wrap it up, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.